It was a quiet Saturday morning, the kind where the sunlight draped lazily across the living room floor, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the faint perfume lingering in the air. Clara had just settled into her favorite corner of the couch, her laptop balanced on her knees, scrolling through emails for work she wasn't really interested in. Life had been predictable, orderly, and comforting at least. That's what she thought. Her phone buzzed insistently beside her, lighting up with a notification from James. Expecting a simple good morning or some mundane update about the day, she smiled softly and unlocked it, only to find a voice memo attached instead. The name on the file sent a ripple of confusion through her. James, private. Curiosity overtook her hesitation, and she tapped play. The sound of James's voice, normally a source of warmth, suddenly carried a sharp edge, hushed and secretive. "I'll see you tonight. Make sure she doesn't suspect a thing," he whispered, a laugh tinged with excitement following his words. Clara froze, her heart lurching into her throat as the next sentence spilled into the quiet room. Details about his other life plans, meetings, and words meant for someone else entirely. The betrayal hit her like a punch to the stomach. The coffee she had just poured trembled in her hand as the reality set in. The man she had trusted with her life, her love, her home, was deceiving her. Her vision blurred with unshed tears, and yet an icy, determined clarity began to form in her mind. This wasn't just a mistake, it was a truth, laid bare by one accidental click. Clara sat motionless long after the voice memo ended, the phone still warm in her trembling hand. The room felt suddenly unfamiliar, like a stage set hastily rearranged while she wasn't looking. Every object around her seemed to mock her, the framed wedding photo on the shelf, where James's arm circled her waist, the throw pillow he'd bought during one of his business trips, the ticking clock that now sounded too loud, too cruel. She replayed the memo once, twice, a third time, each replay peeling back another layer of denial she hadn't realized she was clinging to. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a joke. His voice carried intimacy, confidence, and a carelessness that only came from long practice. Clara pressed her lips together, fighting the sob, clawing its way up her throat. She refused to cry, yet not until she understood the full shape of the betrayal. Instead of calling him, she did something that surprised even herself. She went quiet. No angry texts, no frantic questions. She placed the phone face down on the table, as though it were a venomous thing that might strike again if provoked. Her mind raced, stitching together moments she had once brushed aside, the sudden password change on his phone, the way he took calls in the car, the nights he returned home smelling faintly of a perfume she didn't own. All the signs had been there, whispering their warnings, but love had made her deaf. Now, in the stillness, she made a decision that hardened her spine and steadied her breath. If James thought she was oblivious, she would let him keep that illusion, at least for now. She needed answers, not excuses, and she would get them on her own terms. By evening, Clara had mastered the art of pretending. When James walked through the door, loosening his tie and greeting her with his usual casual smile, she returned it effortlessly, even asking about his day as if nothing had changed. Inside, however, every word he spoke felt rehearsed, every gesture suspicious. She watched him with a new kind of attention, how his eyes flicked to his phone when it buzzed, how he angled the screen away from her, how his laugh came half a second too late when she joked about work stress. At dinner, she noticed his appetite was unusually light, his focus fractured. He excused himself twice to take calls on the balcony, his voice lowered, his back turned. Clara's chest tightened, but she forced herself to keep eating, nodding when he spoke, filing every detail away like evidence in a case she never wanted to open. Later that night, when James fell asleep beside her, his breathing deep and untroubled, Clara lay awake staring at the ceiling. The man beside her slept peacefully, unaware that his secret had detonated her world. Carefully, slowly, she slipped out of bed and reached for his phone on the nightstand. Her hands shook as she unlocked it, not with a password, but with the familiar pattern he'd never bothered to change. What she found wasn't dramatic at first. No explicit messages, no obvious names, but it was the gaps that terrified her. Deleted chats, archived conversations, a calendar filled with vague entries like dinner and meeting at odd hours. One contact stood out, saved under a man's name she didn't recognize, yet the messages, what few remained, were unmistakably intimate. Clara swallowed hard, a cold realization settling in her bones. This wasn't a recent mistake. This was a second life, carefully curated, and she had been living alongside it without ever knowing. The next morning, Clara moved through the house like a ghost, her body present, but her mind miles away. James kissed her forehead before leaving for work, his lips warm, familiar, and now unbearable. The moment the door closed behind him, she released the breath she'd been holding and reached for her laptop. The contact name from his phone echoed in her mind like a riddle she couldn't solve. She typed it into social media, then into search engines, her pulse quickening with every click. At first, nothing. Then, buried beneath unrelated results, she found a profile private, minimal but recent, a woman. The profile picture was blurry, taken from an angle that hid most of her face, but Clara could tell immediately she was younger. There was a softness to her posture, a confidence that suggested she knew she was desired. Clara stared at the screen, her stomach twisting as jealousy collided with curiosity. She didn't know her name yet, but she knew one thing with terrifying certainty. This woman knew James in ways Clara no longer did. Instead of shutting the laptop, Clara did something bold. She sent a follow request. The moment she clicked the button, regret surged through her, but she didn't take it back. Hours passed in agonizing slowness. She cleaned the house, rearranged drawers, folded and unfolded laundry that didn't need touching, all while glancing at her phone every few minutes. Then, late in the afternoon, a notification appeared. Request accepted. Clara's heart pounded as the woman's photos loaded selfies in soft lighting, candid shots at cafes, a smiling picture taken inside a car Clara recognized instantly. It was James's car. Her hands went cold. In the comments beneath the photo were heart emojis from an account she knew too well. Clara closed her eyes, her resolve hardening. This was no longer just about betrayal. It was about reclaiming her truth, and she was done being in the dark. Clara stared at the woman's profile long after the screen dimmed, her reflection faintly visible against the glass. Every instinct told her to stop, to protect what little peace she had left, but another voice, stronger, sharper, urged her forward. She began scrolling carefully, piecing together fragments of a life James had helped construct. The captions were innocent on the surface, but Clara could read between the lines now. Late dinners, surprise rides, inside jokes that suddenly made sense. Her finger hovered over the message icon for several minutes, her heartbeat drumming in her ears. Finally, she typed a simple sentence, erased it, rewrote it, then sent it before fear could stop her. "Hi. I think we need to talk about James." The message disappeared into the void, and Clara felt as though she had stepped off a cliff without knowing where she would land. The reply came faster than she expected. "I was wondering when this would happen," the woman wrote. Clara's breath caught. There was no denial, no confusion, only anticipation. The woman continued, explaining that James had told her he was separated, that his marriage was complicated, and that Clara was just a name attached to a past he claimed he was trying to escape. Each word felt like salt rubbed into an open wound, yet beneath the pain, something else stirred clarity. This wasn't just about a man lying. It was about two women manipulated into opposing sides of the same deceit. When Clara suggested they meet, the woman agreed without hesitation. As Clara set her phone down, she realized this meeting would change everything. Not just her marriage, but the story James had worked so hard to control. The cafe was quiet in the late afternoon, filled with soft music and the clink of cups that felt far too gentle for what Clara was about to face. She arrived early, choosing a table near the window, her hands wrapped tightly around a mug she hadn't touched. When the door opened and the woman walked in, Clara recognized her instantly, not from the photos, but from the confidence in her stride and the hesitation in her eyes. She was younger than Clara had expected, with nervous fingers and a guarded expression that softened the moment their eyes met. For a long second, neither spoke. They were two strangers, bound by the same lie, studying the damage one man had caused from opposite sides of the table. The table. "I didn't know," the woman finally said, her voice barely above a whisper as she sat down. Her name was Lena. She explained everything, how James had pursued her relentlessly, how he spoke of Clara with detached sadness, painting himself as trapped rather than deceitful. As Lena spoke, Clara felt anger rise, not toward the woman in front of her, but toward the man who had orchestrated this cruelty with such precision. When Clara played the voice memo, Lena's face drained of color. She admitted the message was meant for her, and that it wasn't the first time James had nearly been careless. Silence fell between them, heavy and irrevocable. In that moment, Clara understood something devastating and empowering at once. James's power lay in secrecy, and now that secrecy was gone. James noticed it that evening. Not the confrontation, there wasn't one, but the absence of it. Clara was calm in a way that unsettled him, her movements precise, her words carefully chosen. She laughed at the right moments, asked about his day, even mentioned plans for the weekend. But her eyes no longer lingered on him, and her touch when she brushed past him in the hallway felt distant, almost formal. James felt it like a shift in the air, the way one senses a storm before the first drop falls. When his phone buzzed during dinner, he reached for it instinctively, then stopped. Clara didn't look up. That frightened him more than anger ever could. Later that night, he tried to restore normalcy with a familiar lie. He mentioned a sudden work trip scheduled for the following week, complete with practiced frustration and believable details. Clara nodded, making a mental note of the dates Lena had already mentioned during their conversation at the cafe. James watched her closely, searching her face for cracks, but found none. Emboldened by her silence, he leaned in to kiss her goodnight, unaware that every word he spoke now confirmed what Clara already knew. As he turned off the light, convinced he was still in control, Clara stared into the darkness with steady resolve. He thought the lie would protect him. He had no idea it was about to expose him. Clara started documenting everything, quietly, methodically. Each morning after James left for work, she opened a hidden folder on her laptop and added another piece to the growing archive, screenshots of messages Lena had shared, photos of calendar entries, timestamps that overlapped with nights James had sworn he was working late. She saved copies of bank statements, hotel confirmations buried in his email, even the voice memo itself, duplicated and backed up more than once. The process was oddly grounding. Where grief once threatened to overwhelm her, focus now took its place. She wasn't acting out of revenge, at least not yet. She was preparing for the moment when the truth could no longer be denied or twisted. To James, nothing seemed different enough to warrant suspicion. Clara still cooked dinner, still asked if he needed his shirts ironed, still reminded him to take his vitamins. What he didn't notice was how she stopped sharing pieces of herself, the small worries, the passing thoughts, the warmth that once filled their home. That intimacy had been withdrawn like a quiet protest. At night, while he slept, Clara rehearsed the confrontation in her mind, not as an explosion of rage, but as a reckoning. She wasn't planning to scream. She was planning to end the lie with facts, with calm, and with a strength James had never imagined she possessed. It happened on a Wednesday evening, the kind of ordinary day James relied on to keep his secrets invisible. Clara was at the grocery store when she saw the car. His car, parked across the street, unmistakable, engine still warm. Her pulse spiked, but she didn't panic. Instead, She followed the direction of her instincts, pushing her cart toward the cafe on the corner. Through the glass, she saw James leaning forward, his voice low, his hand resting casually on Lena's wrist. The intimacy of the gesture stole the breath from her lungs, not because it surprised her, but because of how effortless it looked. This was the version of him she used to know. The realization hurt more than anger ever could. Clara didn't go inside. She stood there long enough to let the image brand itself into her memory, then turned and walked away with measured steps. That night, James came home humming softly, relaxed in a way he hadn't been in months. He kissed Clara's cheek and told her the meeting he'd mentioned earlier had gone better than expected. She smiled and asked if he was hungry. Inside, something shifted irreversibly. Seeing them together hadn't broken her, it had freed her. James no longer existed as the man she loved, only as the man she now understood. And with that understanding came power. Clara sent the message the next morning, her fingers steady as she typed. It wasn't long, and it wasn't emotional. Dinner on Friday. Just us. I think it's time we talk. She watched the message deliver, then set the phone down, and continued making breakfast, as if she hadn't just triggered the beginning of the end. James replied minutes later, relief practically radiating through the screen. Of course, I've been meaning to spend more time together. Clara almost laughed. He still thought this was about distance, about neglect, about anything other than the truth she now held so firmly in her hands. The days leading up to Friday passed with unsettling calm. Clara chose her words carefully, her tone light, her presence unassuming. Behind the scenes, she finalized her preparations, copies of evidence neatly organized, a bag packed and hidden in the trunk of her car, arrangements made that James knew nothing about. On Friday afternoon, she set the table with deliberate care, lighting candles and cooking his favorite meal. To anyone watching, it would look like reconciliation. To Clara, it was a closing ceremony. When James walked in, smiling and unaware, she felt no fear, only resolve. The invitation had been accepted. There would be no turning back. Dinner started like any other James, complimenting the food, commenting on how the house smelled, inviting, and asking about Clara's week. But she responded differently this time. Her words carefully measured, calm and direct. James, there's something we need to talk about, she said, her voice soft but carrying a weight he hadn't felt before. He smiled, assuming she was about to vent about trivial stress, perhaps work or errands. Sure, love, what's up? He replied, still relaxed, unaware that the world he had built on deception was about to crumble. Clara placed her phone in front of him, the screen unlocked and the voice memo playing softly. His eyes flicked up just as James's own voice filled the room, the intimate, secret words he thought she would never hear. His smile faltered, then disappeared completely. Clara watched him pale, his hands trembling slightly as the reality hit. Do you realize what this is? She asked, calm yet piercing. James tried to speak, but no words could explain months of lies compressed into a single recording. In that moment, Clara understood the power of truth it didn't shout. It simply arrived, and everything built on deceit began to tremble. James sank into his chair, gripping the edge of the table like it could anchor him to a reality that was slipping away. Clara, he started, but his voice was weak, unfamiliar even to himself. Every excuse he had rehearsed over the months dissolved under the weight of that recording. Clara leaned back slightly, her eyes steady, watching him fumble. She wasn't angry, at least, not in the explosive way he feared, but every second of silence she allowed became a mirror, reflecting his betrayal. His mind raced, trying to reconstruct the past, find loopholes, justify himself, but the truth was relentless. Then the calls began. His phone buzzed repeatedly on the table. Lena. Clara didn't move to answer it, though James glanced at it, panic rising like heat in his chest. It's nothing, he muttered, trying to grab the device. But Clara shook her head. Everything is something, James, and tonight, you're going to face it. The room, once warm and familiar, now felt charged, like a storm trapped inside four walls. For the first time, James realized he wasn't in control, and the realization brought a terror sharper than anything he had ever felt. Clara's silence, her composure, her unwavering gaze, these were far more destructive than any fight. Clara finally broke the silence, her voice calm but cutting through the tension like a blade. "I've spoken to her," she said, nodding toward James's phone, the buzzing screen still lit. "I know everything, James. Every lie, every hidden meeting, every work trip that wasn't about work." He flinched, as if struck, his eyes darting around for an escape that didn't exist. For months, he had controlled the narrative, manipulating two women and twisting reality to suit his desires. Now, that control had evaporated. Clara's quiet authority left no room for excuses. Every truth she revealed, every piece of evidence she placed before him, chipped away at the man he thought he was. He tried to speak, to apologize, to explain, but it was too late. Clara pulled out the printouts, screenshots, and carefully preserved messages, laying them on the table one by one. She watched as the color drained from his face, his lips trembling. He realized, in slow, crushing clarity, that his entire double life was exposed, and the consequences were not just coming, they had already arrived. The room felt smaller, suffocating, as if the walls themselves were closing in on him. And Clara, for the first time in months, felt free not because she had destroyed him, but because the truth had finally taken its rightful place, unchallenged and unstoppable. James's composure shattered entirely. His usual calm, collected demeanor gave way to frantic movements, sudden gestures, and a voice raised in disbelief. "Clara, you don't understand. I didn't mean," he stammered, but every word sounded hollow, empty. He lunged toward the scattered papers on the table, trying to snatch them, erase the evidence, and reclaim control. Clara stepped back instinctively, her heart pounding but her mind sharper than ever. She realized then that this man, whom she had loved blindly for years, could become dangerous when cornered. Her hands didn't shake. She didn't panic. Instead, she focused on protecting herself and maintaining the upper hand, knowing that fear would no longer dictate her actions. She spoke slowly, each word deliberate. "James, this isn't negotiable. Your lies have consequences. You cannot fix this with excuses, apologies, or threats. You chose this path." The reality of his situation hit him like a wave. He had underestimated the strength of the person he had tried to deceive. Every pleading glance, every broken sentence failed to sway her. Clara had finally realized that power wasn't in anger or revenge, it was in control of the truth. She would let him watch as his world crumbled, and she would walk away stronger, untouched by the chaos he tried to inflict. By morning, the house was quiet, but Clara's mind was anything but. James had retreated to the bedroom, slumped against the wall, defeated and silent. Clara walked through the living room, her steps measured, her gaze sweeping across the chaos he had left behind. Papers and screenshots that once felt like burdens now felt like trophies of truth. She realized something profound. For months, she had lived under the weight of his lies, letting them define her. Now, she was free. Every decision she made from this point forward would be hers alone, untainted by manipulation or fear. She had the clarity to see exactly what needed to happen, and for the first time, she didn't hesitate. Clara drafted an ultimatum, calm, firm, and immovable. She would confront him one last time, not to argue, not to beg, but to state her terms, transparency, accountability, and boundaries he could no longer cross. She felt no malice, only the satisfaction of a woman who had uncovered a secret life and refused to be a victim. As she prepared herself, her phone buzzed quietly, a message from Lena. "Are you okay?" Clara smiled softly. She was more than okay. She was alive, aware, and in control. And for the first time in a long time, she understood that the power James thought he had was never his, it had always been hers to reclaim. James sat at the kitchen table, the remnants of breakfast untouched, his eyes downcast. Clara stood tall, a quiet authority radiating from every movement. She had delivered her terms, boundaries, accountability, and transparency, and he had no choice but to accept or walk away from the life he had tried to manipulate. But it wasn't revenge that filled Clara now. It was relief, clarity, and a profound sense of liberation. For the first time in years, she breathed without hesitation, unburdened by lies or fear. The house felt lighter, the air cleaner, as though the weight of months of deception had been lifted in a single seismic shift. Later that evening, Clara met Lena at a quiet cafe. There was no bitterness, no rivalry, only understanding and mutual acknowledgement of the life they had both been entangled in. Together they laughed softly, shared stories, and, in that moment, Clara realized something essential. Her worth, her strength, and her happiness had never depended on James. The voice memo that had shattered her world had also opened her eyes, not only to betrayal, but to her own resilience. She walked away from the cafe feeling lighter, freer, and stronger than ever before. The past had been painful, but the future, her future, was entirely hers to claim. And for the first time, Clara smiled without restraint, ready to live a life defined by truth, choice, and unwavering self-respect.